Welcome, everyone. My name is Ammar Qusaibaty. I'm your moderator for this session about policy and movements titled Culture, Cascades, Conundrums, and Comedy. There's a lot of C's in there, but there's other two C's that we care about, climate change, and it brings us every year to BECC. And I'm very happy to be the first time at BECC moderating one of these panel discussions. It's an honor for me to do that. So I work at the US Department of Energy in the Solar Energy Technology Office. Our mission in the office is really to advance and accelerate the deployment of solar technologies for a just transition into a decarbonized economy before 2050. So we have a goal, it's very aggressive, but we're starting by decarbonizing the power sector. And our goal is to really to work on that before 2035. So as a technology manager, you can imagine I work with a lot of brilliant people. We fund a lot of research and development projects. I work every day with brilliant scientists and researchers. I have the good fortune actually to work with them every day, trying to think about ways to deploy solar technologies. And for the past 9 years, we've explored an area where traditionally we have not funded in the office. This is sort of invested in the order of $20 million in, roughly speaking, about a dozen projects that focused on solar adoption. The program called SEEDS stands for Solar Energy Evolution and Diffusion Studies. And our goal was really to bring, economists, psychologists, social scientists, communication experts, bring them together and try to understand a little bit more how people think about solar, how they make decisions, and how they adopt them, what sort of challenges they face. So I'm fortunate because this is not an area I have studied. I'm not an economist, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a social scientist. Actually, I'm a mathematician. But I had to learn on the job a lot of the concepts and principles in these scientific fields. So I'm really fortunate because I feel like every day collaborating with everyone in my job, I'm learning quite a bit. And today we have a really fantastic panel of 4 amazing presenters. And I can guarantee you that we're all gonna learn from them something new today. So I'm excited to be hosting and moderating this session. So we're gonna start with an icebreaker. You can see it on the screen, and just for me to read the icebreaker question. This is sort of to allow a little bit of that creativity and imagination to be manifested here. So the question is, describe or name an invention or a technology that you would love to use in your lifetime. And my choice was teleportation, because I think that will be really powerful at solving transportation sort of carbon footprint. And let's see some of the answers here as we go. Okay, teleportation. All right. We're going to have a screen right now to share, just the presenters. Flying cars, there's a lot of wireless clothing. All right, virtual worlds, that's another way. We are living in a virtual world today. So hyperspeed trains, that's a great idea. I like that. All right, everyone, I committed a cognitive bias by anchoring everyone's thinking by teleportation, and I apologize for that. So cold fusion, all right. No one is reading minds, so we know what the politicians are thinking. So we can come some sort of a food replicator. That's a good one. I like that one. All right. I think we'll give it maybe 1 minute to get those late adopters to think about new ideas. Warp drive. All right. That's space travel. I love it. Okay. Excellent. So we have about an hour today. We have, as I said, 4 fantastic presenters, but we also have, towards the end, We have about 15 minutes of breakouts, and I encourage you, there are two breakouts. One is titled Conundrum and Comedy, and another one is Clubs and Community. So stick towards the end, write down all your questions, and you'll have a chance to battle it with the presenters. So with that, I'm gonna introduce the first speaker. We're gonna have our first speaker is Matt Malinowski. Matt is going to talk about climate clubs. This is really a fun and engaging way of, it's a middle out approach to motivate climate action. So Matt has been working in the energy efficiency space for, I don't know, maybe 15 years or more. I don't want to tell his age. He's still young. And he's been working really with lots of governments around the world, trying to think about ways to make appliances more sustainable. But he's really been concerned in the past years about whether we're doing enough in the US or not. So he started a fun, and I encourage that people do this, fun exercise with his family a few years ago by doing a carbon footprint exercise and basically an audit. He's an expert, he can do a carbon footprint audit. And this exercise, it seems, that morphed into a growing network of climate clubs. So he's gonna talk to us about climate clubs, how to run one, and how much fun he has in having these climate clubs. So Matt, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Ammar, for the introduction. And I'd also like to thank all of you for joining this presentation on climate clubs, which we think are a powerful but still under-tried and underappreciated approach to motivating climate action. So as Ammar mentioned, my name is Matt Malinowski, and I'm joined in this session here by my friend and collaborator, Gautam Jayaraman. Both of us work on sustainability in our day jobs, but today we'll be talking about something we're doing outside of work, something that we think fills a gap both in our personal efforts to be more sustainable and to do our part to address the climate crisis, as well as in the traditional top-down versus bottom-up framework for behavior change for sustainability. So I hope you'll find this presentation interesting and motivating. And together with Gautam, we look forward to taking your questions and feedback during the Q&A and the breakouts that Ammar mentioned. So great, here's what we'll cover in the next few minutes. First, I'd like to take a little bit of time to introduce social support groups and how they lead to peer-led behavior change. I'll discuss how we apply this to climate impact and what we've done specifically in our climate clubs with the structure of the climate club and the initial results. And then finally, I'll take a minute or so to talk about next steps and try to recruit you to help build a climate club and help us make this into a national movement. So during the session, we'll be talking about peer-led behavior change versus maybe grassroots policy action or some of those other topics that they may have seen in other sessions. Obviously this is both and, right? We really want to be pushing behavior change and policy, but our little piece really focuses on this, which we think is also powerful. It really deals with the diffusion of knowledge and norms and the situation of maybe the goal, you've heard about ways to achieve it, but you don't quite know how to get there, or you need a little bit of help from friends, from peers, from maybe somebody who's been there and done that. So examples of these kinds of peer-led organizations are Weight Watchers, Toastmasters, Alcoholics Anonymous. These kinds of middle out groups encourage people to be vulnerable and lead to influence. Members are encouraged to act and do the right thing together. So why haven't we seen more of this in the climate space? Gautam and I looked through the literature and online, for climate clubs, for middle out. We just haven't seen too much evidence of these types of groups. People have a handful of examples they cite, but given the proliferation of these in other areas, it was kind of a surprise to us that there hasn't been much done. And look forward to your feedback. Maybe we missed something important or something that you know about. So look forward to hearing about it. But our explanation is that in the past, climate action was really all about conservation and maybe reducing the excesses of our fossil fueled lifestyle, right? So we turned down the thermostat, perhaps bought a smaller car or recycled. And the impacts were limited, maybe sometimes hard to measure. And maybe there just wasn't that much complexity. Whereas these days, we have lots of new technologies, right? Some of them are bewildering and fantastic. I mean, not quite teleportation, right? But definitely almost flying cars, right? So we have electrified heating systems. Houses can be completely decarbonized. There are gas bans, electric vehicles, I mentioned, LEDs, solar panels. Words like flight shaming or decarbonization. I mean, these are just terms from the past 5 years or so in popular culture. And so the world's both gotten a little more complicated in this area, and there's more that individuals can do to make a difference, and which we think is just the perfect entry for these kinds of middle out groups, these kind of peer-led groups. Some estimates say that about 40% of our emissions result from kitchen table decisions, household decisions, having to do with home energy consumption, consumption of products and services, transportation. So yeah, we think this is a really ripe area. And so we have started 2 climate clubs, one in person, one virtual. The in-person one meets in the Shaw Bloomingdale neighborhood of Washington, D.C. The virtual one is made up of my coworkers at CLASP, an environmental appliance efficiency NGO. Both are around 10 to 15 people. They held monthly meetings of about an hour, hour and a half. The meetings begin with kind of check-ins, a review of what people have done in the past month, presentations on 2 topics suggested by members that are maybe seasonally appropriate or where we can find a speaker who's done something, and then followed by questions, recommendations, discussions. We've popularized this through word of mouth, posters, social media that you can see below to get a reasonable cross section of the participants. And what do people want to talk about? The goal of these meetings is to really create a safe, non-judgmental space where people can be open, address the frustrations and concerns, get support. And so what do people want to talk about? What do they want to learn more about? As you can see, it's a lot, right? Climate change touches everything, and most of our habits have a climate impact. And so to screen this, we've used kind of 2 filters. One is we talk about things that the presenter has actually experience with, right? Something that they've done. They've installed a heat pump. They are composting, right? So that to get it out of just empty talk, here you have somebody who's actually done this and can serve as a resource. And second, we press everybody to estimate the CO2 impact of these actions to make sure these will be meaningful. So again, composting maybe 0.3 tons per person per year, and I'll share some of those impacts in a minute. But we think that these 2 measures really help to keep the whole exercise grounded and actionable. So a little bit about our membership. On the left there is a survey that we've done. How ready are they to act? Most of our members are motivated, but if you look on the graph to the right, their range of knowledge kind of spans the whole gamut, right? There are some people that are just starting and some people that have been working in this field for a long time. And so we think that really contributes to a really healthy mix where some people can be some experts can guide others. And then there are some, experts I'm sure can also be disarmed by questions that they never considered from people that are approaching this for the first time. So it's been a great mix in that regard. And then the in-person club has been going on for 4 months now, and we keep on getting pretty high scores, from a 1 to 10 how likely are you to attend another meeting? How likely are you to recommend this club to a friend? And folks are bringing their friends and helping us grow the community there. So in terms of impacts, here you can see on the left the topics that were discussed. Switching electricity to renewables, bicycle commuting, Energy Star appliances, in this case a fridge, etc. And then the columns are estimated reductions, tons per person per year. And what's helpful about doing this in your neighborhood is that it's the same climate. There are a lot of similar housing types. And so these kinds of metrics and research really scale. You know, what you've done is likely what the options that are going to be in front of your neighbor as well. So we think that's a really helpful kind of alignment. And then middle column is how many people have actually performed this action so far, right? So we have 9 actions implemented over the 4 months, which translates to about 12 tons per year of CO2 equivalent reductions, or about 0.5, so half a ton per household member. So, you know, we think this is a good start, but, you know, of course, this is just one club, right? Which I think brings us to this conference and you know, you, the audience, right? Is we think that this is a great exercise for everybody to try as experts on climate, on behavior change. We would really, you know, like to encourage you and support you if you would be interested in starting a club like this. You know, serve as an expert to your neighbors, to your friends, to a family. They have questions about this. We've heard that they want to do more. They are concerned about climate, but maybe they don't know how to act. And this is, you know, we've put together materials, examples, and are trying to build a community to really have this impact more broadly, and to, you know, help us all do all that we can to make an impact.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Matt. This is fantastic. And by the way, there's a website, climateclub.us. Please, I visited that website. It has really a lot of resources, and I encourage everyone to go to the breakout session and talk to Matt. Maybe there's a secret sauce element that he did not mention, hopefully in the breakout. So with that, we will transition to the next speaker, just to keep on time here. But please, I see a lot of questions. People are having suggestions. It's fantastic. Lots of activities on the chat. Please pay attention to that. So our next speaker is Amanda Dewey. So Amanda is going to talk about community choice aggregation and the relationship with energy efficiency. Oftentimes you don't hear community, you know, choice aggregation and energy efficiency in one sentence, but Amanda is going to share with us some lessons learned from cities to sort of explored that connection, and it's very interesting connections. So Amanda is a senior research analyst in local policy at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy, or ACEEE. She has earned a PhD in sociology. She currently serves as mayor, so we have an elected official here, of the town of Berwyn Heights in Maryland. This is, I believe, her 4th year being as an elected official. And throughout her career, Amanda developed really a superpower of looking at qualitative data and make sense of that. So Amanda, take it away. Tell us about community choice aggregation.
Thank you so much. It's great to see everybody today. I'm excited to talk about some research I did with my co-author, Nick Henner, who's also joined me today. He's also at ACEEE, and so he'll be joining me in the breakout rooms later. And as Ammar mentioned, we are talking about this emerging energy model that we call CCA, or community choice aggregation. So I want to give us some grounding in what that actually means to start with for folks who might not be familiar. Community choice aggregators, CCAs, are just local government entities that combine the procurement power of their residents and competitively procure electricity from an alternative source than the utility. And while this is happening, the utility is still providing the transmission and distribution and billing side of the system. So for example, if I in my community wanted to form a CCA, I could go ahead and shop around and find an electricity source that met my goals and the needs of my residents. And that could become the default electricity source, as opposed to PEPCO, which is our actual electricity source here in my community. And while this is still happening, that electricity is coming through the same wires and through the same system that was happening before for the residents. So as you can imagine with this kind of system, there's two main advantages and two primary motivators that lead communities to want to engage in this. And our research highlights the exact same findings. One main motivator is that communities want to lower their carbon emissions, right? So they might be able to shop for electricity from a source that has a higher proportion of renewables. But at the same time, this aspect of a competitive market would also allow them to shop for lower cost electricity, right? So communities can pursue both of these as their primary motivators or one or the other. And these are voluntary systems by definition, right? So residents are able to opt out and go back to the default at any time. And these are also run through the local and county government most often, or a combination of multiple governments. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. And just to look at the landscape across the US, this has to be authorized at the state level. And there are 9 states that allow this now. 7 states have active programs in place. And actually Maryland, where I live, just authorized a pilot program for 1 county just this past year. So it's really getting a lot of attention. And WELO wanted to really examine this potential for the relationship with energy efficiency for a couple of reasons. First being, you're hearing me talk about reducing emissions, and you're hearing me talk about lowering energy costs. And energy efficiency is a tool for both of those things. But at the same time, a lot of the literature and advocacy around the CCA model has pointed to specifically that an energy efficiency that is a program that's driven locally at the local government level through a CCA might actually be more effective, might be able to reach more customers more effectively through strong community connections and greater trust with the community from this really hyper-local approach. And these advocates in the literature has also argued that this can advance equity, right? We can have more local control and energy democracy and community connections if we're running our energy system in this way. But there hadn't been research actually looking at, is this happening in the energy efficiency space? Are CCAs that are being formed, are they thinking about energy efficiency? Are they engaging with energy efficiency? So that's what we set out to find here. And so we conducted a bunch of interviews and a data request with CCAs across the country, looked at their publicly available program information. And I can talk more about methodology at the end if folks are interested. But I'll go through some of our top findings first. And the big key highlight that I want to name right up front is that the majority of CCAs are not offering energy efficiency programs. So this kind of contrasts with this potential that's been identified in the literature, right? We identified a small number of CCAs in 2 states that are directly offering energy efficiency initiatives. We also found several CCAs that expressed interest in doing so, or they were planning to do so in other states, and some that were connecting their customers to utility programs. So they were using their additional touch points that they had with their customers to plug a program that already was being offered by the utility and serving as a connecting point. But this does not overshadow the fact that a lot of CCAs we found weren't engaging in energy efficiency at all. And so what we're seeing is this gap between what's identified as the potential and what's actually happening on the ground here. There's really what I see as a tool just sitting to the side and not being used by the CCAs. Just to give 2 quick examples of what this can look like though when a CCA engages. We have 2 CCAs here, Cape Light Compact in Massachusetts, Marin Clean Energy or MCE in the Bay Area in California. And these are both CCAs that have a pretty significant history of directly offering a wide array of energy efficiency programs. Cape Light Compact has saved their customers over $100 million since 2001 as they've been offering these programs. And MCE offers programs through partners, through their own revenues, and they actually administer programs through funds that are administered by the California Public Utilities Commission. And these are outliers though, right? This is happening in these 2 places, but these are much larger. Cape Light Compact has sort of a more utility structure, but it's happening and these CCAs are engaging. But that is definitely not representative of what we saw elsewhere. And I also mentioned that CCAs have been identified as having this equity potential, this energy equity potential that so many cities and states are talking about these days. But we found that only some CCAs were actually explicitly pursuing equity goals. So for example, one CCA talked to us about their program where they were financing energy efficiency equipment upgrades for food service organizations in their community. So food pantries and other nonprofits. And that same CCA was targeting energy efficiency programs to food deserts, focusing on refrigeration costs, right? And able to provide more fresh produce for their community in that way. Another CCA talked about emergency energy bill assistance for undocumented residents in their community. So you hear in these three examples, an example of these really targeted, customized approaches for a community. And this lines up with the potential that the literature argues, right? That a community-based energy system like this can tailor what is needed for their community members and really advance equity by having this hyper-local approach. But we found that more often than not, CCAs were either not engaging in equity intentionally, or they were doing what I call falling into the trap of assuming equitable outcomes. So they might say something like, oh, well, we're a CCA, so already we're advancing equity more than the regular energy system. Or they might say, oh, our programs are open to everybody, so we're advancing equity. And the literature around energy equity shows us that we need more accountability and we need more strategic approach to actually reach this potential to advance energy equity. So again, we're seeing this gap between identified potential and what's happening on the ground, despite there being a lot of work going on in this new energy model. So with this said, we talked to all these CCAs, we're talking to cities and states, and we wanted to make recommendations for how they can pick up this tool that's currently being left to the side. Right. And what we realized very clearly, and our CCAs highlighted this, is that context matters. In a situation where a CCA's customers have access to a wide range of energy efficiency programs and they're effective and they're reaching everybody, maybe this connecting framework where they're using their additional touch points with customers is their best bet. And that's the most effective way that they can use this tool of energy efficiency. But in cases where customers are not effectively served by programs by a utility or by a government, or where there's big gaps in the programs, specific customers that need additional outreach, a CCA can step in to fill that gap. They can offer a comprehensive suite of programs, or they can try to fill that gap and sort of reach this potential in their local approach. But what we found was that CCAs face some really particular barriers, some additional challenges. So when we encourage CCAs to sort of take up this mantle and use energy efficiency and use that to reach their potential, we know that we've got to provide some tools for how they can do that and learn from those who have already gone there and the strategies that they've used to overcome. So I can talk more about these in the Q&A as well, or in the breakout rooms, but we know that CCAs might have limited staff expertise. If you are running out of your municipal office an energy efficiency program as compared to a utility office with a bigger budget and more staff, that's a different story. Regulatory requirements that were designed for utilities as opposed to CCAs, it might not match the government or CCA's goals, for example. So we really synthesized a lot of lessons learned from the CCAs on how to overcome these challenges. And so we encourage all CCAs to consider their context and learn from others to use this tool of energy efficiency to meet their decarbonization and equity and energy cost savings goals. And as this is an emerging energy model across the country, more states and cities are pursuing this all the time, that we hope will be able to help bring energy efficiency into that conversation at the same time. Thank you all so much and look forward to taking your questions.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Amanda. This is wonderful. And as you highlighted, I think the biggest challenge oftentimes is building this human capacity at these organizations that don't have that human capacity. But you certainly have started. You have a wealth of knowledge, and people who sort of interested in this, please feel free, leverage the knowledge here. Before we transition to the next presenter, I'm going to put a poll question here, and I'm going to launch it. It's already launched. So let's see here. I'll give people a couple of minutes. When you go to the grocery store or you do some shopping, does it spark some joy? How often, your purchase sparks some joy as it relates to climate change? So we have about, all right. So good number of people presented so far participated, 60% participation. Maybe we'll aim to 90 this time. See how long it will take to get to 90. We're about 80%, so we're getting close here. Okay, 85%. All right, let's see the last 3%, and we'll get to 90. Here we go. Come on, folks. This is fun. Okay, maybe it's we're gonna stay at 87 87% participation, which is pretty good, better than many of the surveys that sometimes we fund. So the results here, you can see them probably on the screen. So about 40, the majority actually have that amazing joy, daily or weekly, which is fantastic. And then the next one is monthly or annually or yearly. And there's a small percentage that happens only rarely or never, which is really a good sign. Obviously, I'm gonna give the floor to Thomas, who's going to talk a little bit about this and the type of conflicts that people face when they go grocery shopping when it comes to sustainability goals. But he definitely have a better scientific way of doing it. So our next speaker is Thomas Decker. He's going to talk about consumer choices and conflicts that consumers oftentimes face around some sort of sustainability goals. This is based on research he's done in Germany. A large consumer study is done in Germany. So Thomas is a professor of marketing and management of biogenic resources at the Technical University of Munich, as well as WT University of Applied Sciences. He studied agriculture and food ecosystems. So he comes from a place in which we all love and recognize food. That's a very important aspect of our climate change challenges, actually. So his scientific research is really focused on this sort of consumer research around renewable energy technologies, adopting them, as well as around agriculture. So Thomas, take it away.
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. Thank you very much for this interesting question. So it was a real brilliant bridge to the presentation, which I'm very glad to present. Well, as you already said, my name is Thomas Decker. You introduced everything at the end. Yeah, I'm come from Bavaria. I live in Bavaria. I work in Bavaria. I like it very much in this beautiful countryside. And besides thinking about or being a scientist, I also have a small agricultural farm. So I produce the food, hopefully the good food, so that I can give you something back. Well, today, my presentation is about how and why do consumers make decisions in situations of sustainable conflicting goals. Well, why is this an interesting topic? Because there are a lot of consumers here in Germany and I guess worldwide that who really want to act in a sustainable way, but they often get into various conflicts of goals. Well, the consumers want to consume a regional product. It should be unpacked. It should be seasonable. But there's a problem. At the same time, it is always not possible that everything is fulfills all these criteria. So our question was, how do consumers in Germany decide in such situations and why? In order to have a look at these problems, we developed 11 conflicting goals dealing in the field of grocery and textile shopping or textile shopping. Yeah, we have several areas of conflicting goals, and these are important ecological purchasing criteria in Germany. You will see then in the next slides. We developed 3 German-wide online surveys, and we conducted them. As I said, 3. Well, we have a so-called overall study. Among other questions, all the 11 conflicting goals were asked. Then we had a food study. Among other questions, only the groceries conflicting goals were asked. And last but not least, we have the textile study. Only the textile conflicting goals were asked. And how do the conflicting goals look like? Well, we have this several criteria. You see them on the left side. For example, the production type, the home transportation, or how to get to the store. And in the middle and the right column, you see some examples which are supposed to be more eco-friendly or less eco-friendly. So is it an organic product or is it a conventional product? Do I transport my products in a cloth bag or in a plastic bag? Or something about the working conditions. Are there fair working conditions or unfair working conditions? And in the next slides, I want to give you some more insight about these conflicting goals and give you some examples. For example, here, conflicting goal number 1. Think about the situation. You stand in a supermarket and you want to buy a cucumber. Well, you have two opportunities. On the one hand, you have a cucumber from non-organic cultivation, and this is unpacked. On the other hand, you have a cucumber from organic cultivation, and this one is wrapped within a plastic film. Well, both cost the same. How do you decide? Which product? Think about which product would you choose? And we asked these questions our participants, and you see here that the non-organic unpacked cucumber, 80%, more than 80% of the people would choose this one. So this unpacked aspect is for our people here very important compared to the organic cucumber. Besides that, we asked them, do you always have some experience in this field? Do you know the situation? And about 2/3 of our people said, okay, yes, they have this experience. And besides that, we asked them, okay, how difficult for you was it to decide? And here you see that about 40% says, okay, it was rather difficult to decide, and about 50% says, okay, it was quite easy or easy to decide. Let's go to the next one, to the next conflicting goal. As I said, we have 11. I just give you 4 conflicting goals. And here we have number 5, something completely different. You want to buy a very specific t-shirt, a very nice t-shirt. Well, however, this t-shirt is not offered in any store near to you. Well, you have now 2 opportunities. On the one hand, you say, okay, you go to the internet and shop it, or you buy a relatively similar t-shirt in the store near to you. How do you decide? Think about what would you do? And here's the answers. What more than 1,200 people said. Okay, 2/3 said, okay, yeah, I want to have this specific t-shirt, and I go online shopping. Well, the other t-shirt I don't want to. Yes. And about 50% of our asked people had the experience in this field, and for them it was not too easy to decide. More than 70% says, okay, it was quite easy for me. Okay, and let's go to the next one, conflicting goal number 5. Okay, it's again in the organic food sector. You want to buy organic food in a big organic grocery store, but this one is just accessible by car. Or you go to a discounter around the corner, but this discounter has the selection is not too good, so the selection of organic food is very small. How do you decide? Do you go by car or do you go by walk? And here's the answer. Well, more than 75% says, okay, they go to the discounter around the corner, and just more than 20% says, okay, I go by car in order to go to this big organic grocery store. And again, about 40% says, okay, they already made this or had this experience. And for about 10%, it was very difficult to answer this question. And now to the last one, to the last conflicting goal, a complete different area. Well, you want to buy a new garment, and you can choose between a garment made of polyester produced in Germany, but you know that this polyester garment, well, it's not good for the environment because it generates microplastic when it's washed. Alternative, you go and buy a garment made out of cotton. But the problem here is that you don't know the working condition which it was produced in Bangladesh. So how do you decide? What do you think? And here's the answer. Well, most of the people say, okay, they want to have the cotton garment. So this microplastic thing is a really big topic in Germany, and they don't want to have it as the close. And another interesting thing is that only 25% has experience in this field. And for about 20% of the asked people, it was difficult to decide. As I said, we had 11 conflicting goals, and due to the short time, I had some focus on these 4 ones. I want to close my presentation with some conclusion. Well, it's really not easy to do the ecological right thing. Besides that, the results of the conflicting goals I showed, well, they were based on this overall study. When we compare these results with the results of the food study or the textile study, we see that the response behavior is quite the same. Moreover, you can explain the decision for a certain conflicting goals by using the experience of the experience with the conflict situation and the difficulty of the decision. Additional, we ask in the online survey several green consumer statements and some statements dealing with the social norm. And these statements also explain the decision of the asked people. Well, at the end, it was a very interesting thing to conduct this survey. And I think that perhaps in other countries, they have also specific conflicting goals. So it would be quite interesting to compare the results. At the end, I want to just say something about the project. Well, all the shown results were part of a very big project dealing with plastic avoidance. And if you want to know more about this project, just have a look at the webpage or contact me. Besides that, of course, I want to thank the Federal Ministry of Education Research for founding the project. And I want to thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, just feel free to ask. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Thomas. There's a couple of questions around, maybe we have a quick minute here around the methodology or the criteria of defining sustainable. And maybe it's a quick answer before we transition to the last speaker.
Or
it's complicated. Okay, it's a long answer, so stick around for the 15-minute breakout, and Thomas, he will tell you all about it, just to stay on time.
I stay on time, yes.
All right, so our last speaker is Beth Osnes. Beth is going to perform live a stand-up comedy set titled Steal This Joke to demonstrate the power of creativity, humor, and voice that oftentimes, make us human again or reconnect us as human beings around topics that oftentimes are really polarizing or galvanizing for no real reason. So Beth is an associate professor of theater and environmental studies at the University of Colorado. She's the co-director of Inside the Greenhouse. It's an initiative for creative communications on climate. She toured an original mini musical called Shine to Rockefeller Foundation 100 Resilient City. That was a program that Rockefeller Foundation funded some time ago, almost like 10 years ago now. And she really facilitated sort of having youth voices in resilient planning. And she wrote a book about that. So if you want to, she documented that experience in a book. I think you can all, learn about the book. It's called Performance for Resilience, Engaging Youth on Energy and Climate Through Music, Movement, and Theater. So with that, Beth, we're all ready for your stand-up comedy set.
Thank you. So I have made it a plural presentation. Steal these jokes. Actually, you can't steal these jokes on climate change because I'm giving them to you for free. In fact, I'm going out of my way to encourage you to give climate comedy a try. Some comedians bemoan the reality of joke plagiarism, but at the University of Colorado, we embrace the spirit of open source climate comedy. I am Beth Osnes, professor of theater and environmental studies, with my partner in crime with climate comedy, Max Boykoff, professor of environmental studies. We have been working with our students for over 6 years, creating stand-up climate comedy shows. We've run an international climate comedy video for 7 years. And then we've published academic articles about the surprising benefits of using comedy to communicate climate change. So let's begin. The list of top climate solutions by Project Drawdown, it's a roadmap for reversing global warming, but it's also a veritable snack platter of comic material. Okay, family planning is part of the second most impactful solution. This helps us guide policies and some pretty good rhymes, like love the glove, or give the pill a free refill, or put your buck on the interrupted well, okay. Refrigerant management is also near the top of this list by Project Drawdown for reversing global warming. A 1950s refrigerator walks into a bar, sees a good-looking refrigerator and asks, "Are you free on Friday night?" Remember, thank you for the laughter, it helps. Anybody else can turn on their mics too. Remember, Nothing is more ripe for ridicule than environmentalists. So go ahead, take aim. Most of us will gladly paint red concentric circles over our bleeding hearts for the sake of the planet. How do you get an environmentalist to change a light bulb? Tell them it's incandescent. What do you get when you cross FDR with a liberal in the pickle aisle? The Green New Deal.
Yep.
This next one is entitled, Nothing Stands in Your Way of Doing Something for Climate. Allow me to explain. To do nothing is to do so perfectly. Nothing is beyond criticism because there's no thing to criticize. But to do something, even just one small thing, is to do so imperfectly. People doing nothing can feel quite beyond reproach. It can feel quite safe to stay among the nothings. But you something people, you are putting it out there for all to see. You plant a tree to reduce carbon dioxide, but then you drive your neighbor's truck to pick it up, which pollutes. And then you water that tree every day with treated water. And whatever you do, one tree, it won't be enough. To do something is to open yourself up to all that is to be done. To do something makes you a target of criticism because you're doing something is perceived by those who are doing nothing as some kind of a critique of their inaction. So they feel compelled to point out the shortcomings of your necessarily imperfect something to justify their nothing. Okay, I'm not telling you this to encourage you to do nothing. Oh no. Do something, please. Plant 2 trees. This is just a heads up so you understand what I mean when I say nothing stands in your way of doing something for climate. Okay, here's a, I have to do this silly thing with the 2 glasses. It's just like, I don't want bifocals, so bear with me. It's a source of comedy in and of itself. Here's another piece.
Part of the act.
Okay, my name is Climate Change, and I am pretty excited. I just signed up for this dating service. It's called Cupid Cares. Yeah, they're supposed to be pretty good. They match people with social issues. Who do you think introduced Angelina Jolie and human rights? Bill Gates and malaria? Cupid Cares. So I thought maybe they could find a match for me too. Okay, wait. I see some confused faces. Oh my God. You guys don't think I'm still hooked up with Al Gore, do you? Okay, with all due respect, allow me to say that I ended our monogamous relationship for a more open one a while ago. Maybe you've heard rumors of me with Leonardo DiCaprio or Don Cheadle. Maybe they're true. Okay, so then why did I sign up? The truth is, I want to meet somebody younger. That's why I'm here at this conference, looking for a match. Okay, well, I saw that up on the top row. You were having an old issue gross out reaction. What is climate change doing prowling around at the BECC conference? That issue's been around for like, what, almost 40 years? Oh, but there's a glint in this person's eye. Kind of a cougar chaser, huh? You like an older issue? But even you might be thinking, I'd be a hard date to take to parties. Admit it, kind of a Debbie Downer. You know, I try and I talk about things besides doom and gloom. But the next thing you know, there I am, chatting somebody up about food scarcity and loss of shorelines. I've been working on being more positive. You know, I've been trying to talk about like COP26 or the youth climate strikes. But it's not easy to seem fun when you know that everybody thinks that you're the one who's going to make the human species go extinct. But I'm trying, damn it! Okay, maybe I've got anger management issues. Those reports of violent outbreaks, you know, storms, floods, hurricanes, they're true. I'm working on it. Listen, I'm not perfect, but do you want to know why you should choose me, climate change, as your issue? I've got staying power. I'm faithful. I'm not going to fade away into yesterday's thing. I'm not like that hole in the ozone or One Direction or Facebook. No. I promise to be the defining issue of our times and for decades to come. I might be the best chance you've got at a meaningful relationship with a single issue. All I'm saying, message me if you're looking for an issue. I'm looking for that spark in someone who cares. Okay. Here's one for all you Catholics or once upon a time Catholics. It is called Climate Confessional. Forgive me, Mother Earth, for I have sinned. I ran a single errand in my car without waiting until I had 3 to run. I coveted my neighbor's new Chevy 4Runner truck with the back bucket seats. Worst of all, I contributed to overpopulation by giving birth to 2 middle-class carbon-emitting teens who take excruciatingly long hot showers. You want me to pray and Our Mother as my penance right now? Okay. Our Mother, whose heart is our haven, warm me by thy flame. Thy people are dumb, and there's more to come. On earth is now far from heaven. Give us today less of our daily dread, and make us not as half-assed as those who have trespassed against you. And feed the mouths from every nation, and deliver us from upheaval. Amen. Here's a topical update from Glasgow, which we all are wanting to hear. You know, we're hearing that a lot from the scientists at COP26 that the outlook for global warming is much worse than they had originally predicted, which is pretty bad when they had originally predicted that it would destroy the planet. But I want to leave you on a last joke that is solutions focused and to leave you on an upbeat. So if you ride your bike once, you get credit for saving on fossil fuels. But if you ride your bike twice, you get credit for recycling. By closing, I would like to say, by giving these jokes away for free, we are hoping to unleash a rogue agent in this otherwise commodified world. Jokes, freely shared, can liberate us through that strange, involuntary opening of the mouth and the mind known as laughter. In that moment, rigidity is relaxed. The single perspective is questioned. Hypocrisy is exposed, and delight is released. Reversing global warming is a mighty challenge to our survival that requires a steep incline in new behaviors. But like any mountain, there is only one way to get over it: climate. Stay tuned for Stand Up for Climate Change comedy show Earth Day 2022 inside thegreenhouse.net. We'll be having, we have a lot of support to be bringing more people into it. So if your institution or club or anything wants to be a part of it, let us know. Thank you.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, Beth. That was incredible. Thank you. This is rather unconventional, but super convincing. I'm sure there's a lot of people gonna hit you up with some training to do some of these comedy sets. So yeah, sign up for the workshops. I want to really thank all of our presenters. We have about 5 minutes, but we can sort of bleed into the breakout sessions. But what struck me throughout these talks, and sort of Beth sort of articulated this more than anything I can think of, is really that we all have voices and we have influence without authority. We don't necessarily need the government to act, or we don't need states to act or politicians to act. We can act today, and we have that power and authority, and nothing's stopping us from acting. So let's galvanize ourselves. Let's get that power of creativity and imagination, of intentional communication, so we can move forward. And I think all of these talks today articulated that theme. We do have influence, and we don't necessarily need authority. We have influence with authority, without authority. So let's go and exercise it.